Welcome back to Secret Weapons. My name is Mark Johnston. If this is your first time here, this is a YouTube channel where we do gear demos and reviews, as well as studio tips and tricks for leveling up your writing, your playing, and your production from the perspective of a guitar player working out of a studio. If that's the kind of thing that would appeal to you, please hit the subscribe button and stick around for future videos. Today we are taking a look at Crossflow from Intrepid Audio. Before we get into things, a quick disclaimer, and it's that I actually consulted on an early version of this device. Intrepid Audio reached out, sent me an early prototype of this. I spent a couple weeks trialing it out. I gave them some notes on it for changes to be made to the device. And that is the kind of like long and short of my involvement with this company and with this pedal in specific, but it feels valuable to kind of put that out at the beginning, that I have some kind of prior knowledge with an early version of this, that I consulted on it early in its development. I was paid for my time to consult on this. This is a sponsored video, but Intrepid Audio gave me no notes on this. I have no talking points to follow. All my opinions are my own, and they will not see this video before you do. Usually at this point in the video, I like to say at its core, this pedal is blank, but that's kind of a hard ask for this context, because for some people, Crossflow at its core is going to be a tremolo. You have stereo in, stereo out. You have a tremolo shape, rate, depth, a volume, a stereoizing ability, a tap tempo, and a bypass. And that is going to be your tremolo system. You have a bunch of trem shapes, including a random tremolo option. The trem rate can be a smooth time control, or it can be mapped to your tap tempo. The depth goes from nice and subtle all the way to incredibly choppy, which makes it, by all accounts, a pretty full-featured amplitude tremolo. Worth noting, amplitude tremolo, not a harmonic trem. But for other people, Crossflow at its core is going to be an expression ramper. You have the ability to send an expression output value from kind of minimum to maximum over a expression or CV output on the top of the pedal. And that can either be manually controlled with this control, or you can use this LFO system in the middle. And this is really kind of, no matter what you want to do with this pedal, this is probably arguably the heart of Crossflow. You have a series of LFO shapes. You have an LFO rate that can either be, once again, a smooth time control or mapped to your tap tempo. And then you have this thing called endpoints with a trigger mode underneath it. Basically, what you can do is set the heel and toe values of an expression output, or the trem rate, or the trem depth, or all three of those things, and then press and hold A, reset all those things, set your heel toe position, set your tremolo depth, set your tremolo rate, press and hold B. And then from there, you can set the shape of an internal LFO that modulates between parameter A and parameter B. You can set the rate to decide how quickly you get from A to B. And then with this trigger mode at the bottom, you can dictate whether it's a non-stop process where when you press that trigger, it just flows from A to B and back again forever. Whether it goes round trip, which is either starting at A or B, you will go to the other one, back again, and then it will park in place. Or one way, where each time you press it, it goes from A to B and then B to A. Or jumping, so basically you can go, every time you press it, it immediately goes from the A parameter to the B parameter with no gap in the middle. And once again, what that means for this pedal is you can set a kind of slow, deep tremolo pattern and then have it automatically or manually ramp to a fast, shallow, or a fast and even deeper tremolo sound. And or you can send the output of this device to something like the Chase Bliss Mood or the Chase Bliss Gen Loss or anything else that has an expression input, but we used the Mood and the Gen Loss in this video to ramp things like the clock control at the center of this pedal. And not only can you kind of smoothly modulate between A and B kind of settings using all these different LFO shapes, and not only can you ramp smoothly between those two parameters with a bunch of different waveforms or a random LFO, but there's also an 8-step sequencer in here. And when you step to that sequencer position, you will actually walk through these 4 LEDs and back again, setting kind of specific settings to all 3 of those controls, and then allowing that to kind of walk through a sequencer, a step sequencer, to really hit very precise sounds versus just kind of ramping from one to the other. And at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, well, that sure does sound like a lot of stuff to set up. That's going to be a pain in the ass every time I need to do it fresh. There are actually 4 onboard presets on the pedal, easy to assign, easy to save. So when you have your sound, when you have everything dialed, you can save it to one of those presets, allowing you to kind of quickly move between this thing as a pure tremolo, a morphing tremolo, a pure expression output, and some sort of crazy, chaotic thing that does all those things at the same time. And as if that wasn't all a lot to begin with, you can sync, like I said, the trem rate to tap, the LFO rate to tap, both to tap, neither to tap. On the icing on top of this very kind of crazy set of workflows available to you, you can also change that expression output from following the shape and rate of the LFO and instead assign it to the shape and rate of your tremolo. So you can, in theory, ramp your trem rate to the LFO and then have that kind of like LFO controlling trem rate controlling expression out. Crossflow can be pretty complicated. It can also be incredibly simple, but as you dig in, you can kind of iterate upwards into cascading levels of complexity that will hopefully not get you lost along the way. That's what we're going to try to do with those sound samples, at least. And on that intro track, we mostly leaned into some of that stereoizing effect in more subtle ways on that acoustic guitar, and then mono tremolo sounds for those electrics and that synthesizer, but with the added benefit of kind of just stepping through clock settings in the mood for some interesting pitch shifts. Like, this thing doesn't have to be this ever-evolving, crazy, chaotic thing. It can also be used for some really simple sounds that are intentional and musical and useful, but it'll also do the crazy stuff too. So let's plug this thing back in and let's give it a listen. So as always, before we get into our sound samples, let's talk through our signal chain and the context we're working in. I am playing my Fender 52 reissue Telecaster into the Benson Germanium Boost and the Benson The Amp. We are running mono in, stereo out of the Crossflow, and this is what our dry tone sounds like. As you can hear, we've got a little bit of reverb going in the amplifier, and that's basically just to kind of help accentuate and call attention to the tremolo sounds and shapes in the Crossflow. Let's go ahead and dig in by starting with just the tremolo system in this device. And as you can tell, this thing is pretty multifaceted in that the tremolo, which is ostensibly kind of the cornerstone of the Crossflow, is really only 4 of the knobs in the device with a tap tempo. We have trem shape, rate, and depth from left to right along the top row, a spot for the expression output, and then our volume control for tremolo, which also has a kind of stereo spread secondary function. Let's start by going ahead and just walking through the different tremolo shapes available on the Crossflow. go ahead and turn up the rate for the random LFO on the Trem Shapes because, as you can hear, it ends up with a lot of downtime. So your tremolo can be controlled in terms of speed and depth by just adjusting the next two parameters, or using the tap sync control in the bottom right hand corner. You can actually assign the tap control to either the trem, the LFO, neither, or both. So here, moving around the trem rate control is just going to be kind of smoothly speeding up and slowing down your tremolo. But when you have the tap sync enabled for trem, it's going to step between different tap ratios. And you can apply some stereo widening to that tremolo by inverting the kind of like left-right polarity of the waveform using the secondary control on volume. It'll be very evident in headphones in a way that can get a little bit seasick for some people. So we're going to showcase it to have covered it, but we aren't going to leave it on for much of the video because if you, like me right now, are wearing headphones, it can get a little disorienting pretty quickly. Stays pretty manageable at low volumes like this, and like low, or not low volumes, but low depth and low rate for just a hair of movement. But gets wonky quickly. Okay, so let's take a look at the A and B endpoints, the trigger modes, the LFO shape, and the trigger switch at the bottom. This is basically the kind of center point of the pedal, both literally and figuratively, that will allow you to set parameters for your trem speed, your trem depth, and your expression out. Save them to an A position and a B position, and then manually or automatically modulate between those two sets of parameters in a variety of different shapes. So let's go ahead and set that up. So we're not going to play with expression for this particular example. We're instead just going to take a look at the tremolo to kind of demonstrate this process. So we've changed the LFO shape to a kind of ramp up. We have a slow, pretty deep tremolo sound. And we are going to go ahead and press and hold A to save the knobs where they are at for rate, depth, and expression out. Those parameters have now been saved. What we're going to go ahead and do is make changes and then press and hold it to save to B. As you can see, the lights underneath trem speed and trem depth have lit up. And what that means is those two are being modulated across A and B. We're going to go ahead to trigger mode and set it to one way, which means each time I press the trigger, it'll go from A to B or B to A, depending on the current state of the pedal. Your LFO rate on the right side is going to determine how quickly it modulates across that, and the LFO shape on the left side is going to dictate the kind of shape of the LFO modulating between them. A ramp up, a sine, a square, a triangle, or random, or, as we will get into later, a sequencer. And because we are in the ramp up mode right here, it will always modulate from A to B. We'll then switch over to a triangle to kind of showcase how you can go both directions. Okay, let's go ahead and switch to a non-stop mode. The four different modes are jumping from A to B, which is just an immediate parameter change, one way, which we've been doing, round trip, which goes from the starting position you're currently in to the other parameter and back again, and then non-stop is basically just going to kind of endlessly cycle between the two until you press the trigger again to stop it. And once you've found a sound you like in here, especially with all the customization you can do, you can save it to one of the presets by pressing and hold the save button in presets to enter save mode. We'll then toggle through to the preset we want to save. This sound is now saved to preset 4, and we can recall it whenever we want, make changes, and then resave it in place. So let's go ahead and give a listen to the expression output control on the Crossflow. Its ability to send expression parameters automated to other devices like the generation loss. So we've got the gen loss set up with the dip switches so that we are modulating the low pass filter in gen loss. Which means as I kind of manually move the expression output control on the Crossflow, you'll hear that represented in the gen loss, regardless of whether or not the Crossflow is bypassed. So we're going to go ahead and take the exact same approach that we did with modulating the tremolo control using the A-B endpoints and then creating a waveform that the kind of waveform shape and speed that those kind of modulation parameters will follow. So let's go ahead and set a kind of fully closed sound. And now open it back up. And now by just starting the trigger in the bottom center, we will have it kind of opening and closing in a triangle waveform. Because we have that tap sync set to control both the trem rate and the LFO rate, we can actually also set those endpoints to modulate our tremolo and that expression at the same time, allowing us to do things like synchronized speeding up of a tremolo with the opening of that LFO. So let's go ahead and set that. But you can actually make things weirder from there. You can use the secondary control on the expression output to switch the kind of source target of the shape and rate that the expression output sends from the LFO parameters to the actual tremolo system, basically allowing you to set an A and B point for expression out. And then instead of using the LFO shape and the LFO rate to kind of modulate those parameters, you can use the tremolo system instead. So let's go ahead and set that up. So now technically, if we start the trigger system, all it's going to do is go ahead and seamlessly ramp that triangle wave back and forth. But let's go ahead and set up a very different sounding sound in the tremolo system. By pressing and holding that tap control and moving the expression output to the other end, we can actually have this expression output be modulated by the tremolo controls. And this gets really interesting when you consider the kind of knock-on effects of modulating all of your tremolo and expression parameters while also letting the tremolo shape and rate be the control scheme for that output. Let's go ahead and see how bizarre we can make this opening and closing of this filter alongside the tremolo. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the sequencer built into this AB system. So you have all these different LFO shapes in the middle of the pedal, and at the very end you have a sequencer, which is really interesting because instead of smoothly or unsmoothly or randomly moving from A to B across the spectrum, what you can instead do is go to sequencer. And you'll see that rather than kind of prompting you to press and hold A here, what we instead have is a flashing light right now. And this will give us access to 8 steps where you can kind of custom set the tremolo speed, the tremolo depth, or for our use case right now, the expression output positions for 8 steps in a row that will then kind of walk through using that LFO rate. So I've gone ahead and I've set up the Mood Mark II with a reverb. which when you modulate the clock can be really cool. So we're going to start right here. And by pressing and holding A, we can step to the next parameter where we can set our next kind of position for our clock. If you don't like one of the decisions you've made, you can use B to go back and reassign. And we're back at 1. All 8 steps are now assigned. Let's go ahead and just have it running nonstop. Slowly.